In 1992 Hollywood lost its legendary Rifleman, but Chuck Connors left behind more than just a TV show. From his secret role in Cold War diplomacy to shocking affairs that nearly ruined his career, Connors lived a life as dramatic as any Western. Now 30 years later the truth finally emerges: how a Brooklyn baseball player became a Soviet hero, why his 3 marriages ended in scandal, and the dark secret he kept until his final days. Chuck Connors was born as Kevin Joseph Aloysius Connors on April 10, 1921 in Brooklyn, New York. His parents Alan and Marcel Connors were Irish immigrants who worked hard to provide for their family during the tough times of the Great Depression. Chuck's father worked as a longshoreman and his mother took on small jobs to help make ends meet. Life wasn't easy, but it taught Chuck the value of hard work. Chuck grew up in a working-class neighborhood, spending a lot of time playing sports at the Bay Ridge Boys Club. He loved baseball and dreamed of one day playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers. At 14, Chuck's life took a big turn. His talent for sports caught the attention of scouts and he was offered an athletic scholarship to Adelphia Academy, a private high school in Brooklyn. This was a big opportunity for him and he made the most of it. At Adelphi he excelled in multiple sports: baseball, basketball, football, and even track on the baseball field. Chuck was a strong first baseman and in 1939 he was named one of the top high school players in Brooklyn. After graduating high school, Chuck had more than 25 colleges offering him athletic scholarships. He chose Seton Hall University in New Jersey, where he played both basketball and baseball. On the basketball court he was a backup center, using his height and defense to help the team win, but it was baseball where he really stood out. In one memorable game in 1942, Chuck hit 2 home runs and had 6 RB, catching the attention of professional scouts. During this time Chuck finally got the nickname he is known for. While playing first base he would yell, "Chuck it to me," and the name stuck. Chuck's college years were interrupted by World War II. In 1942 he joined the Army and trained at Fort Knox. Because of his height and athletic skills he was chosen to be a tank warfare instructor. He later worked at West Point training soldiers and even teaching famous football players who went on to win national championships. After serving 3 years in the Army, Chuck was honorably discharged in 1946. He joined the Boston Celtics during their inaugural season in 1946, standing 6 feet 5 inches tall, playing as a forward and center. Despite his military service, Chuck remained involved in sports, playing semi-professional baseball in Brooklyn during his free time and even playing professional basketball in the American Basketball League. Connors averaged 4 points per game during that season. 5 points per game. His best performance was on December 13, 1946, when he scored 15 points in a close victory over the Providence Steamrollers. However, his basketball career ended in February 1947 after only a few months with the Celtics. On May 1, 1949, Connors' big chance with the Brooklyn Dodgers came, but it didn't start well. In his one and only game with the Dodgers, Connors hit into a double play, and the team lost. Despite this, he persevered and worked hard in the minor leagues, playing for teams like the Montreal Royals in 1951. To the majors with the Chicago Cubs CLS. That season he played 66 games and had some big moments. On July 18, 1951 he hit his first home run against the New York Giants. A month later, on August 26, he hit another one, also against the Giants. By the end of the season Connors had 48 hits and a batting average of .239, not bad for someone who split his time between 2 sports. Chuck Connors' Hollywood story began in the most unexpected way. In 1952 he was playing baseball for the Los Angeles Angels, a minor league team. One sunny afternoon during a game against the Sacramento Solon, something unusual happened. Chuck hit a massive home run. It wasn't just any home run, it cleared the fence and caught the attention of someone in the crowd. Billy Gordon, a casting director from MGM. Billy couldn't ignore Chuck's tall, strong frame and rugged face. After the game he walked right into the locker room and handed Chuck his card. He told him, "You should think about acting," but Chuck didn't take it seriously. He was focused on baseball and didn't see himself as an actor. Then just a couple of weeks later Chuck hurt himself during a game. It wasn't serious, but it gave him time to think. Out of curiosity he decided to visit MGM and see what this acting thing was about. To his surprise they offered him a screen test right away. He gave it a shot and they liked what they saw. Just 3 days later Chuck signed his first Hollywood contract. That quick decision changed his life forever. His first role was in a movie called Pat and Mike, a romantic comedy starring 2 huge Hollywood stars, Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. Chuck's part was small, he played a police captain, but it was still a big moment for someone who had just started acting on his first day of filming. Chuck was excited but nervous. He arrived early and spent hours getting ready. His scene didn't happen until late that night, but when the cameras finally rolled he nailed it in just 2 takes. Spencer Tracy even pulled him aside after and told him, "You've got something, stick with." Those words meant the world to Chuck and gave him the confidence to keep going. After that, Chuck dove head first into acting. He took on every role he could find, big or small. Between 1952 and 1958 he appeared in over 20 movies. One of his most memorable early roles was in Disney's Old Yeller 1957, where he played Bern Sanderson. The movie was a huge hit, and that helped Chuck get noticed even more. He also appeared in films like Trouble Along the Way with John Wayne and The Big Country, where he acted alongside Gregory Peck and Charlton Heston. Each role helped him improve as an actor and build his reputation. In addition to his film work, Connors made frequent television appearances, featuring in 18 different TV shows during this time. Balancing both film and TV was uncommon for actors back then, but Connors' work ethic and versatility allowed him to succeed in both mediums. These 6 years of hard work, diverse roles, and screen time totaling over 1,400 minutes prepared him for the next chapter of his career. Chuck Connors became famous as Lucas McCain in The Rifleman, but it didn't happen right away. In 1957, Connor played a father in Disney's Old Yeller. The producers of The Rifleman saw his performance and thought he was perfect for their show. At first Connor said no because the pay was less than what he earned doing other acting jobs, but the producers really wanted him, so they offered more money and even gave him 5% ownership of the show. That convinced him to take the role. Once Connors was cast, he started training to prepare. He practiced horseback riding and learned how to spin in and shoot a rifle in a way that looked cool on camera. He worked with a gun expert named Rod Redwing to master the moves. Connor practiced so much that his hands got sore and blistered, but he didn't stop until he got it just right. The show premiered on September 30th. 1958, and people loved it immediately. Over 14 million viewers tuned in to see the first episode. Connor's character Lucas Kane was tough but also kind, especially with his son Mark, played by Johnny Crawford. The father's son Bond became one of the most loved parts of the show. Critics said Connors did a great job showing both strength and emotion. The rifle in the show was also a big deal. It wasn't just a regular rifle, it was a Winchester 1892 that had been modified to make it unique. The lever was made extra large so Connor could spin it in a flashy way to the gun. This spinning move became his signature and was shown at the start of every episode. The rifle was also able to shoot really fast because of a special screw in the trigger. This made for exciting scenes where McCain could outgun a bunch of bad guys in seconds. The rifle was so popular that Winchester later made a similar model for fans in real life. But the show wasn't just about action. What made The Rifleman different was its focus on family. Lucas McCain was a widowed father raising his son alone in the Old West. This wasn't common on TV at the time, where most families were shown as having both parents. The show often explored the challenges Lucas faced as both a father and a protector. In one episode, he struggled with letting Mark testify in court because he worried about his son's safety. In another, Lucas had to control his own anger while teaching Mark how to deal with emotions. The relationship between Lucas faced as both a father and a protector. In one episode, he struggled with letting Mark testify in court because he worried about his son's safety. In another, Lucas had to control his own anger while teaching Mark how to deal with emotions. The relationship between Lucas and Mark felt real, and it connected with a lot of viewers. Single fathers in particular wrote letters to Connors thanking him for showing that they weren't alone in their struggles. One widower wrote, "Your show has given me the courage to keep going." Chuck Connor wasn't just the star of The Rifleman, he had a big role behind the scenes too. By the second season, he started attending meetings with the writers. He pitched story ideas and some of them became fan favorite episodes. One of these, The Photographer, was inspired by an experience Connors had with an overexcited fan during his baseball career. Connors also made sure the dialogue fit the character of Lucas McCain. He wanted McCain to sound like a real rancher from that time, so he often rewrote lines to include old-fashioned slang. Connor also cared about making McCain a relatable character. He didn't want McCain to seem like a perfect hero. Instead, he pushed for storylines that showed McCain's flaws and moral struggles. In one episode, Waste, McCain accidentally kills an innocent man. Connor fought for this story because he felt it was Important to show the heavy responsibility of carrying a rifle. Connors also brought in guest stars like his former baseball teammate Duke Snider and helped up-and-coming actors get their start, including Dennis Hopper, who appeared in the pilot episode. By the final season, Connor had so much influence that he was credited as a story consultant on some episodes. He even co-wrote the two-part series finale, making sure it tied up loose ends and revisited old characters. The Rifleman became the fourth highest-rated show on TV in its first season, a huge achievement given the tough competition. It premiered on September 30, 1958 and reached 14.6 million homes with a 33 is the Nielsen rating. The father-son relationship drew many viewers, while the thrilling action sequences captured others. By February 1959, 78% of viewers said they watched the show for the family bond, while 92% of male viewers aged 18 to 49 enjoyed the action. The show's success led to merchandise like toy rifles, lunchboxes, and comic books, generating $2 million in sales within 3 months of its premiere. It also earned 3 Emmy nominations in its first season and stayed popular throughout its 5-year run, even ranking 27th in its final season. Decades later, reruns of The Rifleman still attract fans. A 2018 MeTV survey showed it remained a favorite among viewers aged 55 and older after The Rifleman ended in 1963. Chuck Connor faced a big challenge. The role of Lucas McCain had made him famous, but it also trapped him in the image of a Western hero. The show had lasted 5 seasons with 168 episodes, and viewers couldn't separate Connor from the character. This TYP casting became a problem. Connors wanted to prove he could play other roles, so he rejected many offers to do more westerns. In fact, he turned down 8 Western TV pilots in just 2 years after The Rifleman. While he hoped this would open up new opportunities, it actually slowed his career for a while. To break away from his cowboy image, Connor tried something very different. In the 1964 film Move Over Darling, he played a stiff, formal banker alongside Doris Day and James Garner. It was a big change from his rugged frontier roles, but the film didn't help him much. Producers and casting directors still saw him as Lucas McCain, and even when he auditioned for non-Western roles, they often said he seemed too Western. By 1965, Connors was so frustrated that he thought about quitting acting and going back to professional sports. Despite these struggles, Connors found new opportunities in 2 TV shows that let him show different sides of his acting talent. In Arrest and Trial 1963 to 1964, Connors played John Egan, a defense attorney. The show was ahead of its time, splitting each 90-minute episode into 2 parts: the investigation led by a detective and the courtroom drama with Connor as the lawyer wearing a suit instead of cowboy gear. Connor showed he could play a polished intellectual character. Critics praised his performance, but the show was cancelled after just 1 season. In 1965, Connors returned to a Western with Brandon, but this time the story was unique. He played Jason McCord, a cavalry officer falsely accused of cowardice and kicked out of the army. The show focused on McCord's journey to clear his name and regain his honor. It ran for 2 seasons with 48 episodes and gave Connors a chance to play a more complex and emotional character than his previous straightforward heroes. Connors' most powerful performance came in 1977 when he played Tom Moore in the groundbreaking miniseries Roots. The series followed the history of an African-American family from slavery to modern times. Connors portrayed a cruel plantation owner, a role completely different from his past. His chilling performance showed the brutal realities of slavery without turning Moore into a caricature. The show was a massive success, with its final episode watched by around 100 million viewers. Connors' role earned him an Emmy nomination, a rare honor that highlighted his ability to take on challenging, controversial characters. In the later part of his career, Connor appeared in B-movies and TV guest spots. One of his most memorable roles was in the 1979 horror film Tourist Trap. He played Mr. Slain, a creepy museum owner surrounded by sinister mannequins. The film didn't do well at first but later became a cult classic. Connor also took on unusual roles like battling aliens in the low-budget sci-fi movie The Daytime ended 1980. On TV, he made appearances in popular shows like Fantasy Island, The Love Boat, and Murder, She Wrote. In the horror-action series Werewolf 1987 to 1988, he played the villain Janos Skorin, showing a darker side of his acting. Chuck Connors' personal life was full of love, heartbreak, and drama, much like the characters he played on screen. His first marriage was to Elizabeth Jane Riddell, or Betty, a model from Montreal, Canada. They met in 1948 during one of Chuck's baseball games when he was playing for the Montreal Royals. Betty came from a wealthy family and their romance moved quickly. They got married on October 1, 1948. When Chuck was just 27 and still figuring out his career together, they had 4 sons: Michael, Jeffrey, Stephen and Kevin. At first everything seemed perfect, but when Chuck's acting career took off, especially after he landed The Rifleman in 1958, things started falling apart. He was away for long periods filming and working, and rumors about him being unfaithful began to spread behind the scenes. Their relationship became strained. In 1961, Betty discovered he was having an affair with an actress on one of his film sets. That was the breaking point for her. She filed for divorce and it was finalized in 1962. Although they stayed polite in public, it was later revealed that Betty had threatened to expose his affairs unless Chuck agreed to her terms during the divorce. Chuck's second marriage happened in 1963 when he married Kamala Devi, an actress he had met on the set of Girano. Kamala was born in Mumbai, India, and her mixed Indian and British heritage made their marriage stand out in Hollywood at a time when interracial relationships were still rare. They worked together in many shows and movies like Branded and Cowboy in Africa, and people admired their strong connection on and off screen. But things weren't always smooth between them. Kama wanted Chuck to try more sophisticated roles, but Chuck felt his rugged cowboy image was what made him successful. This difference in their goals caused tension. The marriage also faced issues because of Chuck's reputation for being unfaithful. Despite their early passion, things started to fall apart, and in 1972, after 9 years together, they divorced. Their last movie together was called The Proud and Damned, which felt like a sad reflection of their own relationship. By that time, Chuck's third marriage was his shortest and perhaps the most controversial. He met Faith Quabius on the set of Soylent Green in 1973, where she had a small role. Faith was much younger than Chuck, 33 years younger to be exact. They got married on September 7, 1977 in a private ceremony in Mexico. Chuck, then 56, joked that they'd been playing husband and wife on stage so much that they decided to make it real, but their marriage only lasted 3 years. By 1980 they divorced. Faith later accused Chuck of being abusive during their marriage, blaming his drinking for his behavior. Chuck denied the allegations, but the claims hurt his public image throughout his life. Connors was followed by rumors of affairs and tumultuous relationships during his first marriage. Whispers of fidelity began, and they never left him. One woman claimed she had a long-term affair with Connors in the 1960s and alleged he fathered her child, though this was never proven on set. Connors' flirtatious nature became well known. Actress Joan Crawford once said he could charm the birds from the trees but couldn't stay loyal. His reputation even cost him professional opportunities, with some actresses refusing to work with him. In one infamous 1975 incident, Connors was reportedly caught in a compromising situation with a young actress at a party. The scandal was hushed up but reportedly lost him a major film role. His children from his first marriage spoke of the strain his lifestyle put on their family. Jeffrey Connors later shared that his father always chased thrills which affected everyone around him. Despite the controversies, Connor rarely addressed the rumors. Near the end of his life he reflected, "I've lived my life on my own terms. Some might not approve, but I have no regrets." Chuck Connor had strong political views that made him stand out in Hollywood. In 1967, when most people in Hollywood were against the Vietnam War, Chuck joined a parade in New York City. Many praised him but others criticized him. Chuck didn't just talk about his beliefs, he worked hard to support them. He helped Republican candidates, especially Barry Goldwater, during the 1964 presidential election. This hurt his career, but Chuck didn't care. He once said, "I'd rather lose a job than give up my principles." In 1972 he was even asked to run for Congress, but he decided to stick with acting. The Vietnam War brought a lot of arguments in Hollywood, but Chuck stuck to his views. He supported the war and didn't agree with the protesters. In 1967 he marched with others in support of U.S. troops. He said, "We're fighting communism over there so we don't have to fight it here." This didn't sit well with many in Hollywood, and he even argued with co-stars about it. When he was filming Soylent Green, he had a heated debate with Charlton Heston about the war. Chuck didn't just talk, he showed his support by visiting Vietnam many times between 1968 and 1972. After the war, Chuck was sad about how poorly the veterans were treated. He said they deserved parades, not protests, and that the country had let them down. One of the most surprising things about Chuck's career was how much the Soviet Union loved his show The Rifleman during the 1960s and 1970s. When tensions between the US and the Soviet Union were high, The Rifleman became one of the few American shows allowed on Soviet TV. People loved his character Lucas McCain because he was a strong father and stood for justice. By 1973, around 250 million Soviets were watching the show. Even Leonid Brezhnev, the Soviet leader, was a huge fan. When Brezhnev visited Washington, D.C. in 1973, he asked to meet Chuck Connor. This meeting led to something incredible. Later that year, Brezhnev invited Chuck to visit Moscow. Chuck stayed for 2 weeks and was treated like a big star. He met BRV at the Kremlin, and the two even had a playful contest with guns Chuck had gifted him earlier. Chuck also went to a special screening of The Rifleman where fans went wild for his autograph. During this trip, Chuck filmed the documentary called Peace and Friendship, which was shown on Soviet TV to millions of viewers. The documentary showed Chuck meeting regular Soviet citizens and talking about how Americans and Soviets could get along. A year before his death, Connors had one last special role. On November 3, 1991, he appeared in a TV movie called The Gambler Returns: The Luck of the Draw, which starred Kenny Rogers. Connors played his most famous character, Lucas McCain from The Rifleman. For a short but memorable scene, he wore McCain's classic outfit and held the famous Winchester rifle. In the scene, McCain challenges the gambler to a shooting contest. Even though the scene was only about 90 seconds long, it brought back memories of Connors' most loved role. Fans were thrilled to see him as McCain one last time. The moment was even more special because Johnny Crawford, who played his son Mark in The Rifleman, also appeared in the movie. They had a short but touching scene together, making longtime fans very happy. The movie got high ratings and was a perfect way to say goodbye to Connors' most famous role. In 1992, when he was 71, doctors found out he had lung cancer. This was likely because he smoked a lot, up to 3 packs of cigarettes every day. Fans were shocked because Connor was always seen as strong and healthy. At first, he didn't tell many people about his illness and kept making public appearances, but by October 1992 he became much sicker. On October 28 he was taken to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles because he also had pneumonia, which made things worse. He stayed there for 13 days fighting the illness while doctors tried everything they could. Sadly, on November 10, 1992, Connor passed away. The cause of death was lung cancer, with pneumonia as a major factor. His death made many people sad, and tributes came from co-stars, athletes and fans who loved him. Connor left behind a powerful legacy. His show The Rifleman is still loved by fans and continues to air on TV even today. It helped shape how single fathers were shown on television and inspired other westerns. Connors also made history in sports. He was one of only 13 people to play in both Major League Baseball (MLB) and the National Basketball Association (NBA). In 1946, while playing for the Boston Celtics, he became the first player ever to break a backboard during a game. This happened before the Celtics' first home game during warm-ups. Connor's baseball career was short, but he made an impact in other ways. In 1966, he helped resolve a contract fight between the Los Angeles Dodgers and 2 pitchers, Sandy Koufax and Don Dale. This was an important moment that gave players more power in baseball English.